So basically, they're all dead, metaphorically or otherwise.
Wow, I didn't expect your family history to be quite so depressing.
Well, it does make time pass by faster on the road. Girls trip, woo!
And another thing, when you said girls trip, I expected shows in Las Pegasus or shopping in Manhattan, not this.
Sweetie, you surprised me. Don't you know a vacation with educational value when you see one?
Their library is in ruins, Heather. I don't see a place structurally fit enough to house education here.
Oh, my sweets, we don't need books to learn. We need people. Bird people, to be exact. Like that guy.
Heather, please don't make me talk to the creepy old homeless man. I don't like the looks of those lesions. Paired with the hair loss, we could be looking at mange.
The companions of a princess must be open-minded and cultured. Now go over there and let that vulture put his culture in you.
Oh, sweet Celestia, not the mites!
Don't be rude. I'm gonna go secure us some lodging, so play nice with the bald eagle until I get back. Hello, my loyal subjects. Heather Blossom here. And if I had to jump into any scary old crow's van, it'd be this guy's. And let me tell you why. Grandpa Gruff was introduced in the episode The Lost Treasure of Griffinstone, a minor role, but then moved on to greater supporting role at the start of Season 8, being the elder representation of the Griffin people, sort of. It's never really clear what Gruff's role in Griffin society is. He clearly keeps the oral history alive for a price and maybe an ambassador of some kind. But looking at the Griffin Kingdom, it's hard to say what kind of law and order there is when there's no clear rulers. Their last known king was some time ago, which might lead us to believe they have no formal government, which would explain why their city is just falling apart since there's no organization to maintain it all. Yet, when a school of friendship is founded, the Griffins are still represented and have one of their own attending. Grandpa Gruff is the one to butt heads and share equal footing with the King of the Changelings, the Lord of the Dragons, and that Hippogriff soldier guy whose name I forgot. Since a guard is there to represent hippogriffs, though, that could imply that Grandpa Gruff doesn't explicitly have to be a ruler to be there. Heck, he might not be anyone of recognized rank at all. I doubt the rest of Griffinstone really cares about being involved with an equestrian school, so when he opted, apparently orphan Gallus, to go, most likely no one stopped him. But why? Why did he do this? And why Gallus? By Gallus's own admission, Grandpa Gruff isn't his grandpa. In fact, he's not anyone's grandpa. It's just his name. But why then, in Gallus's flashback to Heartsbreakers, does he appear to be celebrating, I use the term generously here, the Blue Moon Festival with 3 other young griffins, them being Gilda, Gabby, and some unnamed child? Let's go back to Gilda, actually. In his introductory episode, Gilda mentions that the scones she sells are her Grandpa Gruff's recipe. Her Grandpa Gruff, whom she seems to live with or at least cares to cook for and visit. But how can that be when he's not anyone's grandpa? And when referring to the other 2 Griffins in the Heartswarming episode sharing the table with them, Jim Miller, storyboard artist and co-director, mentioned that there was no relation between any of them. So what's going on here? What's this creepy old man's deal? Well, I'll tell you one thing, I'm not going anyplace dark as you're thinking, so sit down. Where I am going is back to Griffinstone. Crumbling, disorganized Griffinstone. Like I said before, there ain't no public services available here. Their destroyed library is testament enough to that, so let me just cut to the chase. There's most likely no orphanages. Every Griffin seems to be on their own for the most part, except for the group surrounding Grandpa Gruff, and I'm certain this is no coincidence. Yes, I'm suggesting that this haggard old man adopted himself 3 lovely daughters off the streets. Or 2 and a little boy, I don't know, that kid is androgynous as Smolder. But you may ask yourself, Heather, my poignant princess, how can you be so sure? Maybe Gilda invited him into her home. Maybe she's the kind one taking the young and old off the street, and that's an interesting theory in itself. But let's not forget Gilda's attitude towards other Griffins when Pinky and Rainbow arrive in Griffinstone. She does seem to care about some Griffins, but only discreetly, helping one up that she knows, but other than that, she seems completely bought in with the Griffin way of life, not wanting to make a big show of affection or selflessness, and taking people in is kind of a big gesture, which is why I'm more on the side of Grandpa Gruff on this one. He seems like a guy who's set in his ways and wouldn't give a flying feather of what people thought of him for taking in a few stray cubs. But that brings us into one obstacle. Gallus, a Griffin we know that has nobody at all. Why didn't Gruff take him in? The answer there is simple. He couldn't afford to. He's already got 3 younger Griffins relying on him, one of which is seemingly younger than Gallus. Anyone who's dealt with kids or has had to support a family knows what a difficult position that is to be in. Housing and feeding everyone would be difficult enough. Thank the stars he doesn't have to clothe them. And yes, Gilda and Gabby seem to have jobs of their own to chip in, but it's debatable how much they make. Gilda owns a food cart in a town where most are stingy with their money, and Gabby is a mail birdie or an independent delivery Griffin, I guess, and probably gets paid by the parcel. I can buy that they'd just squeak by if they took in Gallus. Heck, maybe he could have gotten a job as well, but then there's a word of a pony school accepting foreign students that'll board them and potentially feed them for free? Not only would this take a griffin off the streets, but put them in the environment filled with some of the most docile creatures in Equestria, ponies. He'd be fed, safe, and educated on a topic that saved a nation countless times over, friendship. No doubt Gabby and Gilda were also on board with this idea. Spreading the word of friendship to griffins is no doubt a hard task, and this would add another griffin to their cause. Now, maybe you're not completely bought into this. Maybe you're more into Gilda being the warden of the homeless shelter, but let me remind you of this. Gruff was the one that dragged an initially unwilling Gallus to Twilight School. Gruff was the one confronting global leaders on the missing Griffin boy, and Gruff was the one Gallus felt the need to convince to let him stay. Once the air cleared, of course. Oh, and thanks to a more recent episode, we also know Gruff is keeping in touch with Gallus through letters delivered by Gabby. There was nothing making this old crow do anything as far as we know. The writers could have easily written Gilda into this place, but they didn't, so we can only infer that Gruff was the driving force in Gallus's presence. And if I want to get speculative with the details, think of how the same thing essentially happened with Gilda. He might have been the one to send Gilda off to flight school with Rainbow Dash to begin with. He's certainly old enough to have been there in her life at the time, and flight camp sort of offered the same benefits to Gilda as the school did for Gallus. It was a safe, educational place for her to be, and she learned about that concept that keeps pony society running so smoothly: friendship. Want even more speculation? Think of how Gruff was strategically placed at the head of the table for us to see during the Blue Moon Festival. That placement also implies him to be the head of the house, and the fact that Gilda makes scones based on a recipe he originally developed, it might be safe to say that he also mentors these griffins to a degree so they can have a trade to support themselves once he's not around. By now, I bet you're thinking, oh Heather, my renowned royal, that's all very convincing and sweet, but if this were to be true, why is it he comes off as such a crotchety jerk in the show? And my response is that's just a product of his upbringing. We can assume he spent most of his life in the Griffin Kingdom, a not too friendly place. He is the way he is because he has to be, or he had to be. With age comes experience, and no one seems to have packed on the years as much as him in that kingdom. He's seen a lot and knows a lot, and though he may have grown accustomed to the way things have always been, he must realize things don't have to be that way forever. According to the map, Griffin and ponies are just a small ocean apart, so he must know a bit about their neighbor's culture and how much more fruitful it seems to be. He's a bit old to employ the methods of better living himself and to others, but he sees young griffins with nothing who can learn these ways and pass them on for a better future. Essentially, Grandpa Gruff is saving all of Griffin society in the long run. You're welcome, Brony community. I'm Heather Blossom, and maybe Las Pegasus would have been a better idea.
You think?